I don't have to tell you that China has its tentacles in everything we do. They are poisoning the minds of our young people with TikTok. They're poisoning their bodies, wiping out almost an entire generation of young people, killing 100,000 of our fellow citizens each year through fentanyl. I also sit on the House Armed Services Committee, and I represent two very distinguished bases, including Fort Leonard Wood, but also Whiteman Air Force Base, home of the B-2 stealth bomber and soon to be home of the B-21. We're concentrating on being an effective deterrent against the CCP and the PLA. You know, there are some generals who are openly saying that we could be at war with China by 2027. That's 3 years. We're trying to get ready for any potential conflict. I believe that we have to do everything we can to keep our country safe from China's influence and espionage, and agriculture is a critical part of the conversation. Our food security is national security. We have to be prepared for what could be coming. You know, in 2022, it was the last report shown China owned 383,935,000 acres in the United States of America, and yet you cannot go there and buy land. Recently, we introduced the American Land and Property Protection Act to protect Americans and our land from ownership by foreign adversary nations, including China, Iran, Russia, Venezuela, North Korea, Cuba. They shouldn't even be able to buy an outhouse in the United States of America, as far as I'm concerned. So, Mr. Daley, why is it important that we protect our property here in America from the Chinese Communist Party that wants to replace us as a world power?
Thank you, Mr. Congressman. An excellent question. It's a point of the spear question in terms of what we're dealing and having to address in terms of the Chinese Communist Party and how they've effectuated laws, recent laws over the last couple years that have effectively weaponized private companies, private Chinese companies, and put their private citizens under obligations to report and do what the state wants. So that becomes the issue before this committee and you as leaders of this country. What should we allow, given that China has pretty much put in place a system and laws that make and weaponize their companies and put their individual citizens in a position they have to do what the state asks them to do?
Well, I think it's time to circle the wagons. Look, we can halfway do this. Our governor had an executive order last year prohibiting any land sales within 10 miles of a military base. I mean, that's a good start, but I'm the firm belief Chinese communists should not be able to buy property in America. Case closed. And it may hurt us on trade. I know, sir, Ambassador, you just mentioned that we need to increase our trade with China. This may hurt our trade, but we've got to protect America. Mr. Gackel, what contingency plans, say we are at war with China over Taiwan in the next 4 to 5 years, what contingency plan do producers have, soybean producers have, to protect the investments in our producers here in America?
Thank you for the question, Congressman, and provided some highlights earlier in oral and written testimony. We learned from the 2018 tariffs and retaliatory actions from China just how much that type of situation can affect our bottom line on the farm. And as I mentioned before, looking to diversify and grow new markets, understanding that there are risks there when you rely so heavily on one particular market or country. The scale of China being so large makes that risk even greater, and so I think that's why you're seeing more farmer dollars invested in finding these new markets, finding new exports, and as I talked about, another contingency is just more domestic demand and more domestic uses for what we are growing here. But again, we may continue to outproduce that demand even if we find new on-takers for renewable diesel or the meal that I talked about. So we're going to have to grow. We're going to have to do both.
Well, I just want to close. I appreciate you being here. This is a very serious matter, and I think most Americans are asleep when it comes to the threat from Communist China. And I'm here to tell you now, the big bad wolf is at the door, and we better make sure that our house is made of brick and not straw. It's going to get blown in, and it's not going to be a pretty picture. Thank you so much for being here, and I yield back.